John, ever have one of those days, folks, where you think you found paradise, only for it to unravel like a cheap sweater snagged on a rusty nail? Well, let me tell you, we had one of those recently, and Karen nearly launched herself into orbit, patience-wise. Welcome back, fellow adventurers, to another chapter of our van life journey after 50, where the road less traveled sometimes leads to a campsite from, well, let's just say, another place. Karen, he's being diplomatic. I was ready to chew concrete. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The morning actually started with such promise, didn't it, John? John, it really did. We'd woken up in what the guidebook described as a tranquil lakeside haven, in the heart of Bavaria. The photos online showed sparkling water, happy campers smiling serenely, and swans gliding by. Our trusty van, the Wanderer, was parked, we thought, in a prime spot with a sliver of lake view promised if you craned your neck just so. The air was crisp, the coffee was brewing, and we were looking forward to a day of gentle exploration and perhaps a little lakeside reading. Karen, my plan was simple: finish my current book, maybe sketch the lake, and just breathe. After a few hectic travel days, weaving through bustling German towns, the idea of tranquil haven sounded like pure bliss. We'd paid for 2 nights, thinking this would be a perfect recharge spot before heading further south. John, the first hint, perhaps, that tranquil might be a subjective term came with the morning ablutions. The shower block, while clean enough, had a timer system that clearly believed cleanliness could be achieved in approximately 90 seconds. I'm not exactly high maintenance, but even I felt like I was in a slapstick comedy, soaping one leg while the water cut off, then frantically jiggling the button for another precious burst. Karen, I emerged from my 90-second drenching feeling less refreshed and more like I'd wrestled an octopus in a phone booth. Still, I thought, minor inconvenience, we've dealt with far worse. Remember that campsite in rural Spain where the hot water was a myth whispered by ancient travelers, John? John, vividly. Compared to that, this was luxury. Or so we thought. We set up our little outdoor chairs, got the breakfast things out. The sun was peeking through the trees. It was still, at that point, shaping up to be okay. The sliver of lake view was indeed a sliver, mostly obscured by a rather large, aggressively plastic flamingo belonging to our neighbors, but hey, flamingos can be cheerful, right? Karen, right. Until their owners decided that 8 a.m. was the perfect time for what sounded like a competitive yodeling tryout. Now, I appreciate local culture, I truly do. But this was less melodious alpine call, and more cat caught in a lawnmower. John, it was enthusiastic. And loud. Very loud. We exchanged a look. You know that look, the one that says, are we really hearing this, but also, let's not be judgmental, maybe it's a local custom we're unaware of. Karen, my attempt to read was immediately scuppered. The yodeling was followed by an equally vigorous argument, in German, that seemed to involve a misplaced bratwurst. At least, bratwurst was a word I caught several times, punctuated by some very expressive hand gestures that crossed the invisible boundary between their pitch and ours. John, we tried to tune it out. We really did. We're pretty adaptable, that's one of the cornerstones of this lifestyle after 50, isn't it? Trading the predictable for the unpredictable. Sometimes that unpredictability is a breathtaking sunset in a place you never expected. Other times, it's a bratwurst-fueled domestic dispute at breakfast. Karen, I decided to go for a walk, hoping to find that tranquil lakeside haven part of the campsite. The lake itself was beautiful, I'll give it that. But the shoreline directly accessible from the campsite was, well, let's call it compact. And popular. Very popular with families whose children seemed to communicate exclusively via high-pitched shrieks that could shatter glass at 50 paces. John, while Karen was off communing with the shriekers, I was trying to plan our next route. The Wi-Fi, another advertised perk, seemed to be powered by a single hamster on a very tired wheel. Pages loaded with glacial slowness. I managed to download one map update before the connection gave up the ghost entirely, presumably because the hamster needed a nap. Karen, I returned to the van feeling a little less zen than I'd hoped. John was wrestling with his laptop, muttering about digital gremlins. The yodelers had, thankfully, taken a break, but had been replaced by someone nearby who was painstakingly learning the bagpipes. One note. Over and over. It sounded like a goose being slowly squeezed. John, it was haunting. And not in a good way. We had a brief, whispered conversation. Is it just us? I asked. Or is this place a bit much? Karen, a bit much? John, darling, it was like a three-ring circus where all the clowns had food poisoning and the lions were on strike. I could feel my patience, which is usually quite robust, beginning to fray around the edges. But we'd paid for 2 nights. We're not ones to just throw money away, are we? John, no, we're generally quite frugal. That's part of how we make this long-term travel sustainable. So, we decided to make the best of it. Perhaps it'll quiet down later, I said, with an optimism I didn't entirely feel. Let's go explore that little village the guidebook mentioned, the one with the ancient church. Karen, the village was lovely. Quaint, cobblestoned, everything a Bavarian village should be. We had a decent lunch, bought some local cheese. For a few hours, the memory of the campsite cacophony faded. We started to feel like ourselves again, curious travelers, soaking in a new culture. John, that's the beauty of getting out and about. It can reset your perspective. We even found a little bakery and treated ourselves to some Apfelstrudel. See? I said to Karen, the day's looking up. Karen, and it was. Until we got back to the campsite. As we pulled the wanderer into our spot, we noticed a new addition to the neighboring pitch. The yodelers, bless their cotton socks, had acquired a small, inflatable bouncy castle. For their 2, very large, very loud dogs. John, dogs. On a bouncy castle. Barking. Enthusiastically. It was a sight to behold. I almost wanted to take a picture for its sheer surrealism, but Karen's face told me that might not be the wisest course of action. Karen, my face was probably a study in controlled fury. The bagpipe learner had, it seemed, mastered a second note, so now it was 2 notes, played with the same monotonous, soul-crushing repetition. And a new family had arrived on our other side, who immediately started a very smoky barbecue, sending plumes of greasy smoke directly into our open van windows. John, it was a sensory assault. The yodeling echoes, the barking bouncy castle dogs, the 2-note bagpipe lament, and now the olfactory offense of questionable sausages. I looked at Karen. Her knuckles were white where she was gripping her half-read book. Karen, I tried, John. I really, truly tried. I told myself, this is an experience. This will be a story one day. I thought about all the wonderful, peaceful places we've stayed. I thought about the freedom we have to just be. But the desire to just be somewhere else, somewhere quiet, was rapidly becoming overwhelming. John, she went inside the van and closed the door with a very definite thud. I stayed outside for a bit, pretending to check our tire pressure, but really just trying to absorb the sheer, unadulterated chaos. It was almost impressive in its comprehensive lack of tranquility. Karen, inside, I was having a serious internal debate. Part of me, the frugal, make the best of it part, was saying, stick it out. It's only one more night, but another part, the part that had eagerly embraced this van life for freedom and joy, was screaming, run. Run for the hills. John, I think the turning point, the real, haha, moment for me, came when a child from a few vans down started practicing the recorder. Badly. And the only tune in their repertoire appeared to be Hot Cross Buns, played with a demonic fervor, slightly off-key, over and over and over again. Karen, that was it. The bouncy castle dogs, the phantom bratwurst dispute, the 90-second showers, the bagpipes of despair, the acrid smoke, and now hot cross buns as a form of auditory torture. I opened the van door. John was standing there, looking utterly bewildered. John, she had a look in her eyes I hadn't seen since we tried to assemble that flat-pack wardrobe back in our old house. A look of quiet, simmering, righteous indignation. "Karen, John," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "We are leaving. Now." "John," I didn't even hesitate. "Good idea," I replied. The relief in my own voice was palpable. Sometimes, you just know. There's a point where persevering stops being admirable and starts being just plain daft. This was that point. Karen, and that, folks, is why my patience finally snapped. It wasn't one big thing. It was the relentless onslaught of small, noisy, smoky, irritating things, all conspiring to shatter the illusion of a tranquil lakeside haven. You've probably all been there, right? That moment when you just say, nope. Done. John, the decision made, a strange sense of calm descended upon us, even amidst the continuing chaos. We became a ruthlessly efficient packing machine. Outdoor chairs. Folded and stowed in under 30 seconds. Awning. Retracted with military precision. Interior loose items. Secured as if preparing for a rally stage. Karen, it was amazing how quickly we could move when properly motivated. The yodelers paused mid-yodel to watch us. The bagpipe student faltered on his second note. Even the hot cross buns maestro seemed to sense a shift in the force and took a breath. John, I went to the reception to, let's say, relinquish our second night. I didn't ask for a refund. I knew that would be a bridge too far, and honestly, the price of our escape was worth every penny. The bewildered receptionist just shrugged. I suspect they were used to early departures. Karen, as John started the engine of the Wanderer, I took one last look around. The dogs were still bouncing. The smoke still billowed. The faint strains of hot cross buns were attempting a comeback. I almost laughed. It was so utterly, spectacularly awful that it had looped back around to being almost funny. John, almost. Pulling out of that campsite felt like a jailbreak. As we drove away, the cacophony faded behind us, replaced by the reassuring hum of the Wanderer's engine and the gentle sigh of relief from my co-pilot. Karen, where are we going? I asked, not really caring, just happy to be moving. This is the magic of van life, isn't it? The freedom to change your mind, to abandon a bad plan, to quite literally drive away from your problems. John, I had a vague idea. I'd seen a spot marked on one of our apps, a Stellplatz, a simpler, often municipal motorhome parking area, about an hour further on, in a much smaller village, promising nothing more than a place to park in peace. It sounded like heaven. Karen, the drive itself was therapeutic. The Bavarian countryside unrolled before us, green and pleasant. We passed actual tranquil lakes, with actual swans, and no audible yodeling or bagpipes. The contrast was almost comical. John, we found the Stellplatz easily. It was tucked away behind a small community hall, next to a quietly babbling brook. There were perhaps 5 other vans, all spaced generously apart. The only sounds were birdsong and the gentle rustle of leaves. Karen, it was perfect. Absolutely, gloriously, understatedly perfect. No frills, no bouncy castles, no 90-second showers, because there were no showers, and that was fine by us for one night. Just peace. John, we parked the Wanderer, leveled her up, and then we just sat for a moment in silence, letting the tranquility wash over us. Karen poured us both a cup of tea from the thermos. It tasted like victory. Karen, now this, I said, is more like it. The tension that had been coiling in my shoulders all day just melted away. I could feel myself breathing properly again. John, it's funny, isn't it? You can travel thousands of miles, see incredible sights, but sometimes the greatest luxury is just a bit of peace and quiet. And the ability to choose it. Karen, we took a little walk along the brook. No shrieking children, just a couple of ducks paddling serenely. We found a bench and sat, watching the water flow. It was the antidote to the chaos of the morning. John, later, as evening drew in, we made a simple dinner. We didn't even bother putting the chairs out, we just sat in the van with the doors open, listening to the brook. It was one of those simple, perfect van life evenings that reaffirm why we chose this path after 50-inch. Karen, and we talked, didn't we? About the disaster campsite, as we'd already dubbed it. We even managed to laugh about it properly then. The sheer absurdity of it all. The yodeling dogs on the bouncy castle became a particular point of amusement. John, it's a good reminder, I think, that not every day on the road is Instagram perfect. There are challenges, there are annoyances, there are campsites designed by committees of tone-deaf hyenas. And that's okay. It's part of the adventure. Karen, what I realized, sitting there in the quiet of our new, unassuming spot, was how important it is to trust your instincts. My instinct had been screaming at me to leave that awful campsite hours before I actually verbalized it. That ingrained politeness, that don't want to make a fuss or we've already paid mentality, can sometimes keep you stuck in situations that are genuinely detrimental to your well-being. John, and our well-being, our peace of mind, that's a huge part of why we embarked on this journey. It wasn't just about seeing new places, it was about living differently, more intentionally. And intentionally choosing not to endure a symphony of suffering is a valid choice. Karen, absolutely. One of the joys of this life, especially at our age, is the freedom from obligation. We don't have to put up with things that make us miserable, just because it's the path of least resistance or because we've committed financially in a small way. The cost of that second night at the disaster campsite was a small price to pay for reclaiming our sanity. John, it also highlighted, once again, how well we work as a team, especially when one of us reaches a breaking point. There was no argument when Karen said, "We're leaving," there was just, understanding. And action. That's crucial when you live in a small space and navigate the world together. Karen, you were a star, John. You just got it. And I think, over the years, we've learned to read each other's stress signals pretty well. My white-knuckled grip on a book is usually a fairly major tell. John, indeed. And my sudden, intense interest in tire pressure when surrounded by chaos is another. We've evolved our own little language of "let's get out of here" cues. Karen, this whole experience, as frustrating as it was in the moment, also reinforced something I've been thinking about a lot on this trip, the value of simplicity. That first campsite, with all its amenities and advertised attractions, was a source of stress. The second, with almost nothing but space and quiet, was a balm to the soul. John, it's often the case, isn't it? The more bells and whistles, sometimes the more potential for irritation. We found some of our happiest moments in the simplest of spots, with just nature for company. It's a recurring theme in our travels, finding inspiration and beauty in unexpected, often unadorned, places. Karen, and it's a lesson that applies beyond just campsites, I think. Sometimes, in life, we get so caught up in chasing the five-star experience, that we miss the profound beauty of something simpler, something more authentic. That little stellplatz by the brook was authentic. The disaster campsite felt like a caricature. John, a very loud, smoky caricature. So, what's the moral of this particular story? Don't trust all campsite brochures. Always pack your plugs. Never underestimate the sonic power of a badly played recorder. Karen, all of the above. But also, I think, it's about honoring your own needs. If a situation is draining your joy, and you have the power to change it, then change it. Life after 50, for us, is about maximizing joy and minimizing avoidable stress. And sometimes that means cutting your losses and finding a quieter brook. John, it's that core philosophy, isn't it? Living fully, 1 mile and one story at a time. And this, believe it or not, was a story worth collecting, even if it was a bit jarring in the making. It's certainly one we won't forget in a hurry. Karen, no, the image of those dogs on the bouncy castle is seared into my memory forever. It'll be our go-to anecdote for worst campsite ever for years to come. And you know, looking back from this peaceful spot, it's already becoming funnier. John, time and distance have that effect. And a good night's sleep, which I have a feeling we're both going to get tonight. The only sound here is the water, and maybe an owl if we're lucky. Karen, that sounds like bliss. So, what's on the agenda for tomorrow, now that we're back on an even keel and strategically relocated? John, well, this little village we're in now is apparently the starting point for a rather lovely forest walk, leading to some old castle ruins. No guarantees on tranquility, but I have a feeling it'll be a significant improvement on yodeling at dawn. Karen, a forest walk to castle ruins sounds perfect. A proper dose of nature and history, without the accompanying soundtrack of domestic disputes or amateur bagpipers. I'm already looking forward to it. John, me too. It's amazing how a change of scenery, and a significant reduction in decibel levels, can restore your enthusiasm for adventure. This is the resilience of the traveler, I suppose. You take the rough with the smooth, and you learn from every experience. Karen, and you learn to appreciate the smooth even more when you've had a particularly rough patch. That quiet brook outside sounds like the most beautiful symphony in the world right now. John, it truly does. So, that was our tale of Karen losing her patience, and hopefully, you can see why. It's a reminder that van life isn't always idyllic sunsets and perfectly curated experiences. Sometimes it's about navigating the noisy, messy, frustrating bits and finding your way back to peace. Karen, and realizing that the freedom to make that choice, to walk away and find your peace, is one of the greatest gifts of this lifestyle. We wouldn't trade it, even for a campsite full of bouncy castles, well, maybe if they were silent bouncy castles. John, a fair point. We hope this little misadventure brought a smile to your face, or perhaps a knowing nod if you've ever found yourself in a similar predicament. It's all part of the rich tapestry of life on the road. Karen, thanks for joining us on this rather chaotic part of our journey. We're glad we could share the story, and the eventual relief, with you all. It reminds us that we're all navigating our own versions of noisy campsites in life sometimes. John, indeed. And finding those quiet brooks is always worth the effort. We'll catch you on the next one, where hopefully the loudest thing we encounter will be the birds. Until then, keep seeking out your own moments of peace, and keep living fully. Karen, 1 mile, and one, sometimes very noisy, story at a time. Take care, everyone, and may your campsites be tranquil.